welcome, Filippo. And we would like to start the conversation by maybe if you can introduce yourself to us and also discuss your background in architecture and design and your school and whatever you want to tell us about your career.
Absolutely. So thanks a lot, first of all, for having me here. My name is Filippo Nassetti. As you can guess from my accent, I come from, guess where? Italy. I was born in Bologna, which is a city, it's in the north of Italy. It's between Florence and Milan. And that's also where I studied. I did study something in between architecture and engineering. So that's the background. But then I started trying other things also. So before we get into that, I relocated in London 6 years ago, where I live at the moment. And yeah, so in terms of background, I studied, as I was saying, architecture, but then I got more and more interested in computational design first. That was my entry point, and specifically computational design for product design and design engaging with the human body. And wearable products, as we will see later on. So for me, it was a slow transition from more conventional type of architecture studies to computational design first, and then product. Yeah, that's more or less the background. And then I guess we will get into the details of everything in the next steps.
Yes, of course. And you are the co-founder of a company called MHOX, an EU-funded research practice and a startup. Can you discuss what exactly is your main focus at MHOX?
So MHOX, or MHOX as we pronounce it originally, but I do understand that's always a bit of confusion how to pronounce it. It was founded as a startup in 2012 by Alessandro Zomparelli and myself in Italy. We started working on European funded projects, and then we evolved throughout the years. So if we want to give a recap to that, for 3 years between 12 and 15, we focused a lot on 3D printing and wearable products specifically. I don't know if you guys remember, but back then it was the time of the hype of 3D printing. There were articles on the subject every day, and there was a lot of excitement. People were talking about revolutions in architecture and design and big changes to the manufacturing industry. And I think our work situated itself along that path. So basically what we started with a pretty broad funding to explore new potentials for customizations of product with 3D printing and other digital fabrication techniques. But then within the first 6 months, we started specializing on working onto the body. So our first project, we're really trying to think how you can integrate 3D scanning of the human body, digital modeling, and 3D printing of unique pieces, which is stuff that nowadays sounds pretty much like an everyday thing, but not as much as 10 years ago, because it was a bit less, but that was something quite new onto the scene. There were many
back then it was not quite common to discuss about this stuff. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it sounded pretty new and fresh. There were many people working on that, and there still are many people that we all know in the circle. But it was quite exciting. Also when you were relating to people external to the architecture and design community, many of the things that you were saying sounded brand new and with a strong potential in that sense. So focused a lot on. We worked overall on 8 to 10 products, trying to develop them from concept to development to market and so on. And then a few other things started kicking in where we were going. So I think around 2015, we started taking on different things, and we lost a bit that super focus onto the subject. So that was when I moved to London and I started working at Zaha and started teaching at the Bartlett later on, and also Alessandro took on different things. So let's say our careers and our path and our interest became wider than that focus that we had at the beginning. So MHOX evolved at the same time. So it started as a startup with that focus, but then it became more and more a space for independent research, which is something which I always craved, and it's something which is very important for me, the fact that you as a designer can have a channel to try things with a good degree of freedom. Like you don't need to negotiate with an extended team, you don't need to negotiate with hierarchies or clients or money or so on, but you can experiment more freely. So I think that MHOX became more and more a place where this type of project can happen. I mean, very often when you say these things, the situation gets a bit too loose, but I think we managed to keep the focus over the years, delivering approximately one experimental research project a year since then. It becomes a space for collaboration, it becomes a space to try things that then get into teaching. And so, yeah, that's what MHOX is today. I would say it's more like a platform that can sustain this type of projects.
So, and you told me you're pronouncing it as MHOX. What does it stand for? MHOX?
So let's say there is not like, I mean,
words.
No, there is a reason for that. So when, although we like, well, okay, let me go through. So when we started working together, we were, I mean, focusing on computational design and generative techniques. So we were very fascinated by the idea of applying some of the idea of genetics into design. So how genes are controlling the shape of our body and the shape of any life form that exists on Earth. So how can you think of the code as the genome that stays behind products and so on?
Right.
So in that sense, in science, the HOX genes are the genes that control the shape of the body. And M stands for mutated. So we are looking at mutated HOX.
Mutated HOX.
We like the idea of mutation a lot in our background and applications. However, it has to be said that that's also, when we chose the name, it had to deal also with the way in which it looks when it's printed. We like the idea that it was almost like a code. And we also like the idea that it was a bit of an enigma, like not really clear. So something that you look and you don't know what stands for, which is probably not the best branding choice ever. But
no, I think it's really great, and I like the idea of the name mutated HOX. That's nice. Very scientific.
Yeah.
Nice. And you're also a senior designer at Zaha Hadid Design, where the company is mostly focused on the design in much more smaller scales, especially products. Can you discuss Zaha Hadid Design's design approach?
Yeah, so basically Zaha Hadid Design is the Zaha company that deals with product design, small scale installations, and all this type of things. So it's not architecture, it's design, so mostly product design and its surroundings. So I think the approach of the practice is to rely on all the research being done through the 40 years that Zaha has been practicing around, and pushing it to then apply to the scale of the product. So the way we work, generally, there are two main ways. It's either there is a collection of products which is sold directly by VHD, and we also do collaborations with other brands. So throughout the years, the company has been working on a multitude of collaboration, including Bulgari and sportswear, and Donna Karan, and many, many more. So all the collaborations on product that you see related to Zaha have been carried out under the brand Zaha Hadid Design. So my role there is to focus on computational design. For that, so I joined the team. Before I was working in ZH Code, which I think you know from
yes, Shajai and team.
Yeah, I was working with them, but then I had a strong interest on the scale of the product, and that's why I decided to shift to Zaha design. At the moment, I tend to collect their. My job is the job of a designer, so I work on products, designing the objects and all the things. But I tend to focus on the projects where an element of computation may be relevant for the success of the project. So whenever there is, I don't know, a collection of objects, some specific pattern or something. I also work on animations there, which is an interesting development.
So you're between the scales.
Yeah,
large
definitely.
and small.
Definitely. So yeah, I think it's I like a lot working there because I think that I always like to have both research project and more commercial projects, like working with clients, working on products that have an impact on the real world beyond research. So I think that working with the design language of Zaha in that sense is very rewarding because very often when you work on research project, it's quite complex to really bring certain elements of research to actualize products, commercial products. But working within that framework, I think there is a lot that you really, the projects vary a lot in terms of scale, in terms of application. So as a designer, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And also, is it the same building with Zaha Architects where the office is located?
There is like a transformation in the buildings going on. So at the moment we work separately.
Yeah, nice. You teach at UCL, the Bartlett School of Architecture, as part of the B Pro Master's degree program. What kind of direction do you lead your research agenda at UCL Bartlett?
Yeah, so just to give an overview to the people that are following, the B Pro is focusing on computational design. So it's a research program, postgrad research program on computational design. It's organized in clusters. So generally the way you work is that there are 2 or 3 tutors dealing with a unit of 14 to 20 students throughout a year. So the program runs for 1 year. And students work on a project throughout the year, so there is a lot of time to do stuff and so on. And specifically, the research I do there can be named as PostNatural Design, and it's basically evaluating and investigating how PostNatural design languages may have a potential for architecture. So let's say something more about what I mean by postnatural. Postnatural, it's for me something that defines an ambiguity between natural and artificial, digital and physical, material and digital. So if you look, for instance, at the type of work which I do, it's something that you look and there is an element, a natural inspiration to that, but also the fact that it's been done with advanced technologies and so on. So I'm interested in general in working on something that, if you look at it, it would be ambiguous to understand whether it's natural or artificial, whether it's digital or physical. I believe that this ambiguity is expressing a lot of the world we live in nowadays. So with the development of technology and manufacturing techniques, and the transformation in the softwares that we use in architecture, all this traditional opposition between something which is either natural or artificial, either physical or digital, that doesn't make sense anymore. So it's something that there is a very wide space for research onto that. That's what we research. Obviously, I'm not the only one working in this direction. There are, but that also gives more credibility to the research. The fact that there is many people working in that direction means that probably the research you're doing is more relevant than just being the only guy in the world.
True.
That's why I situate my work, and the work we do with the students is in that direction. So basically exploring more at an architectural scale all this type of design sensibility and all the techniques that come with that.
Yes, true. I can imagine. And our upcoming studio workshop at the Academy, which starts from the next week on November 6th, is titled also as Body Architecture. Like our audience, if they want, they can go and check the link in the below. Just limited seats are left. Can you tell us what will be the key takeaways from this studio by the students?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to say that I'm very excited for this opportunity for several reasons. I think it's not easy to do a focused program on body architecture in general, because generally all the institutions are more focused on more conventional architecture. And for me, it's a way to really explore with students some of the implications of my research on products that relate to the body and everything. So I think the main takeaways for people joining the course would be, first of all, a good warming up in computational design, because we will have a few classes dealing with that. So it's a good way to learn tools that can be applied in many ways. But beyond that, and I think that's probably the most important thing, is that being the program structured on 6 sessions, we can really develop a project throughout that. So at the end of the day, it's really not only about the tool, but it's about the design culture that stays behind a project, which is one thing which I think is super relevant if you want to become a designer, if you want to become an architect. It's not only about knowing the tool, but cultivating a design sensibility and eventually delivering a project. Generally, there is a lot of line going on in terms of workshops, in terms of classes, but it's not that easy to find courses that really aim at a project.
Yeah.
So I think the challenge for us, Hamid, if you remember when we were discussing it at the beginning, was how can we bring some of the elements that students will get in a post-grad course
exactly.
And have some of the elements. And for me, one great thing about that is really also how to make all this knowledge more accessible.
Yeah, true.
All these masters are very expensive. Also, personally, I think that probably I would have not been able to afford it myself when I was.
Yeah, true.
It was a big thing,
exactly.
If we could, make this knowledge more accessible also to people that would not be able to come to London or who don't want to come to London for other reasons, I think this is just a way to distribute knowledge. And one more thing on that, I think if you're a designer that is looking for change, is looking to do something new, the fact that you educate other people in that direction is incredibly important. So the change is not driven only by the project that you do, but how you can work with other people to expand your goal, your mission, your vision.
Yeah, right. That's actually basically that's what we were aiming for to build at Academy, to bring those inaccessible designers and architects to our platform and make their knowledge accessible. And maybe someone doesn't want to go to study master's degree at Bartlett to learn from Filippo Nassetti. They don't want to do that, but they want to learn from Filippo because he has a valuable knowledge. Or the studios that we had before, they're really providing kind of inaccessible knowledge, not even from schools, from the pioneering architects, from pioneering designers. And that's what we are trying to reach at Academy. We have done quite a number of good workshops, studio workshops together. Students have generated a lot of great projects. We have shared them on our channels. And this is a really good opportunity to make this knowledge accessible by its enthusiasts and by the young professionals. Thank you so much for your mentioning this point, actually. And the body architect, just once again, body architecture studio workshop will start from next week on November 6th. If you're interested to join, a couple of last seats are left. You can check the link and register from the link in our bio. And we talked about the new design tools and technologies. With the emergence of these kind of tools and technologies, how do you think it is helping us to understand more of the nature and design with more awareness of it?
That's a very good
understanding its behavior, yeah.
Yeah, because if you look at the history of architecture and design, I mean, the fact that designers take inspiration from nature is not exactly a new thing, right? It goes back as to Greek architecture, but not even before. Like people has always been looking at nature as a reference for architecture. I think what was new of the latest decades is the fact that we introduced the computational element into that. So clearly our understanding of nature is mediated by science. And so in that sense, one of the latest upgrade is really how you can understand nature through computation, how you can, for instance, write a simulation of how a tree would grow or any other natural phenomenon, all the simulations, from particles, movements of fluids, of water, and so on. So I think that science is providing a background for a wider modeling of nature, understanding of nature, and also how you can then integrate some of these elements into design. I think that the great chance that we see here is that, we live these days, we are all aware that our relationship with nature, it's critical, like in sense that due to climate change, the disruption of ecological ecosystems around us, we are at the point in which we need to reframe certain things and reevaluate. And I think that the fact that designers are able to understand that some of the natural principles and integrate them into the design may eventually lead to a stronger integration and chances to develop something which is more integrated with the planet rather than just superimposed as a human component. So I think that the idea of the PostNatural that we were saying before is relying on this type of understanding and modeling of nature, and this also has an ecological implication in the sense that it aims at connecting elements, or it aims at a stronger relationship with the environment rather than a disruptive one. Yeah,
right. What do you think, what is the role of 3D printers in the design world, and in which way do you use them?
So 3D printing, we started working with that because, as I was saying at the beginning, it was a chance it's the technology that allows very easily to work with one-offs. So products that don't need like initial investments, such as, if you think of like casting a product, then you need to create a mold. The mold is generally expensive, it takes some time. So you have a big initial investment to start to do something, and that's also why generally products are repeated, set similarly all the time, while 3D printing allows you to work with one-offs, and which can be every time different and customized and so on. I think that now in 2021, we are a bit less naive than we were in 12 or 13 to think that that will really change the world. However, for the type of research work that we do, 3D printing remains as the primary tool for fabrication. It still is not matched in its, beyond the fact that you can work with one-offs, it's still unprecedented for the fact of the type of the complexity that you can achieve or the type of shapes that you can do. That's still pretty unique. So clearly as designer, I do, and the people I know do a very extensive use of 3D printing for prototyping, first of all, but also it becomes also a technique at the moment which can be directly used for artistic products. We can also take some of them just to show quickly 3D printed pieces that can become final ones.
How many hours it took to 3D print that one?
It's not that long. I think I don't have a specific estimate, but I think it's a few hours. It's not.
It's not that much complex.
It is complex, but it's not that big. So for 3D printing, complexity doesn't make really difference, no? So if it was a cube of the same size, that would take the same time to print.
Do you have any other models right there?
Sorry?
Okay. Oh, this is that one. Yeah. The cover
that's
photo.
quite complicated, right? As a model itself.
Yes.
So how
this is super complex. How do you manage to 3D print like this complex geometry? Because there's a lot of those nodes going inside each other.
Yeah, so it's basically the technique was SLS, selective laser sintering. So the way it works is that it lays a layer of powder material. Then there is a laser passing onto that layer and solidifying it, and it goes on and on. So that means that while you do it, there is always one layer of powder underneath. So the geometry is always self-sustained, so it can basically print any shape because of that, any shape that makes sense three-dimensionally. So, I mean, something like that, I think we will look at the modeling in the how to do this, specifically in the body architecture
workshop. You're right.
Yeah, that's one. So another one, let's go have a look at some of them. That's another one, similar technique that were tasks.
This is the one that we used for the cover photo, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's precisely that one. The technique is different yet similar in a way. Like the production technique is the same. So that's another one. Then what else do we have? Oh, the Carapace also. There's another one that you may have seen.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, I remember. You worked with Alessandro, right? For this?
Yeah. These two I did them with Alessandro. Were our projects. This is 2013. We released it, and this was 15 when we did that.
Yeah, they're impressive.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, also this one. It's the one that stands on the side.
Yeah, nice. They look great. Awesome. So we will be exploring all these in the body architecture studio workshop. If you guys are interested, please visit the link in our bio. There are a couple of last seats are left. You can just register and join the studio next week on November 6th. And what kind of design tools and software are in your circle of design that you use them on daily basis in your projects? And also, what are some of other tools that you use generally?
Yeah, so everyday software for me is Rhino Grasshopper and Maya. So which is the also pipeline at Zaha. All the Zaha design relies on the three software, at least for concept. Then for further stages of design work, there are other things. But for concept, it's mostly this. So that's really every day. Also, this was done in Rhino Grasshopper. This one was done in Rhino Grasshopper also.
Impressive. This one is another level.
It's probably my favorite. I don't know. It's also the last one. So we will look at this one as well into the project. And then I also use a bit of Houdini. Mostly at Bartlett, we work with Houdini as well. Although that's harder to use in daily practice. It's more experimental software, but So that's most of it. Then it depends sometimes. I mean, after 10 years that you work on that, you also went through different things. In the past, I worked with Blender for some time. Now I work more on Maya because, since Zaha is relying more on Maya than Blender, that's also why I rely more on that at the moment. We used to work in processing back in the days. Like these ones were scripted in processing initially.
Yes.
But yeah, now processing it's a bit harder to use in general.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so it's let's say 80% it's Rhino Grasshopper, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We had an interview with Robert McNeil. We will publish it next week. Yeah. He shared a lot of insightful information about the software, about the company. So we will share it next week. So you can just see, hear, or learn where the name come from, where the company is founded, and where they started. Yeah, Rhino is my favorite software as well. I really like it.
Yeah, also Rhino 7, I think they made very great steps forward.
Yes. Rhino Insight, SAPD, these are really great features of Rhino 7 as well.
Also the visualization, I mean, that was a fancy thing, because then I'm working with screenshots, like to document the process. There's no need to render. It's just taking
exactly.
Exactly. Really good at the moment. Really, really good.
Exactly. Awesome. What do you think about our platform, Filippo?
I think it's great. I mean, mostly the thing I love the most is the fact that you make things accessible. It's really the fact that people can connect from everywhere in the world. Before, knowledge was more fenced, so to speak. You need to come to a master's degree in a specific city and so on. So I think that the work that you do had this implication, which is absolutely great. And it's really good to work with you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And in closing, let me just go through the questions. If we have. I can't pop it on the screen. Maziar asks, hi, what are your opinions about cybernetic architecture?
What do exactly we mean by cybernetic architecture?
Probably it's cyborg, if I understand it right, cybernetic. Maybe he means cyborg architecture. For example, you can have body parts which like you can have lenses, body parts that are connecting to your body, and you can use them as extensions. For example, phone is another extension for us, and maybe glasses could be another extension, or even for those disabled people, it can be body parts, legs, arms. What do you think about that part of design?
Yeah, I mean, no, in that sense, I think it's something which is of primary interest for me and for us. Like when we started with Alessandro working together on products which are customized on the body, we were looking at a lot of prostheses and how they work. So I think that definitely there is an extended view of prosthesis for which glasses can be seen as prosthesis, clothes can be seen as prosthesis. But the thing which was very interesting for us was to try and rethink the identity of the prosthesis. How, the body is not something which is a fixed entity, but something that can be transformed by technology, and that happened throughout the human history, and in the future there will be even more possibilities for that. There is also one social implication which is quite important for us, is the fact, I mean, this hasn't come out much in the interview so far, but we worked for a while on medical products also. Like at the beginning, beyond masks and fashion products, we were also looking at prosthesis and orthosis, and we had a few products dealing with that. We did like a concept for a full leg prosthesis. We work on orthotics, like the standard, something that helps in damaged part of the body. There was a funny project which we did in 2015, which was a very small orthosis, like for the little finger of a flute player. So basically, this flute player had damaged the tendon here. It was hard for him to hold the key in the flute.
Right.
So what we did was 3D printing a very small ring that was making the little finger stable. That was an interesting implication, but at large, what was interesting for us was also how you can bring aesthetics into the medical products. So there is it's into that. So the idea, the goal was if you don't have a leg, that doesn't mean that you're lost forever. Like that, the fact that the prosthesis should not be just a sign that something is missing, but can become a sign of a new identity. And in sense, I think there are lots of examples. Like if you look like at those Blade Runners, like people that don't have the legs and use the prosthetic blades, then they can run faster than how natural people would do, or how like prosthesis can change the body for the better also. In the last years there were also a lot of like fashion models and singers which were coming from a disabled background, which were in fact making a statement of how they are. I think that's a more inclusive view of our own bodies.
Yeah. So Devil Blue Heart asks, when is the studio classes? So the studio will start next week on November 6th. You can check the link in our bio and register for the last couple of seats. And also Devil Blue Heart asks, what is your favorite material to 3D print with? And do you think large-scale 3D printing is sustainable?
That's a good question. So we work mainly with powders. So this is a nylon powder. This is a very interesting material. It's done by an Italian company that they do this. They name Windform, and they are composite materials. So it's basically nylon and glass fiber. They also have a material which is nylon and carbon fiber. We chose this material because we like the look of it. It looks a bit theoretical, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
But the material is also very strong. So it's used in Formula One application mostly.
Right.
It's really a strong material, and with strong mechanical properties. We always work with this material because of the fact that complexity is free in a way. Like you don't need to think of like support material like with other technologies and so on, and that's why we always work with this. We also like minimal shades of color in most of the projects, so white and black was fine for us. However, large-scale 3D printing, I think it's definitely interesting. Sometimes I don't like too much when the idea is just to scale up the 3D printer. I think that I'm more fascinated by scenarios in which when you scale up the thing to produce, you also rethink the technology because of that. So it's not that to 3D print a house, you need to build a 3D printer which is larger than the house. But maybe, I don't know.
Basically, if you want to 3D print a rocket, you don't need to have a 3D printer bigger than a rocket. Yeah,
exactly. But maybe there are ideas like we're using swarms of robots, for instance, swarm of small robots producing parts. This type of speculation is more fascinating. And sustainability of material, it depends. I think it's hard to have a view which is general. I mean, clearly 3D printing relies still a lot on plastic, like polymer materials, which are probably not the most sustainable ones. But at the same time, 3D printing also means that you can produce only what you need. So if you rely on traditional techniques, sure, maybe the material is more sustainable itself, but then you need to produce more to make it viable. So I think sustainability is you always need to look at the large picture of production and not only at the material itself. However, there are some experiments which I think were very interesting. I don't know if you remember D-Shape, for instance.
No, particularly. D-Shape?
D-Shape and Riccodini, they were doing 3D printing in Italy, a large scale, and they were looking like the technology was about binding sand with a binder. So the idea was that you were going on a site with sand and using the local sand to then solidify it and grow. In that sense, I think it was interesting because then you would use local material and so on. So yeah, I think the question of sustainability, it comes down to a wide overview of the manufacturing and production process more than the material itself. Said so, I do understand the fact that sometimes we rely in 3D printing with materials which are not sustainable in themselves, but I think there is such a strong conceptual potential in 3D printing for sustainability that we need to keep that in mind. So with 3D printing or additive manufacturing technology, you only produce what you need. So, and that's super strong premise, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I love the technology, and we're following it a lot, where the technology is going, and that's impressive to see how these companies are developing these technologies. But yeah, there is still time to fully start using these tools in construction, in real construction companies. So it will take some time. And thank you, Filippo. In closing, I would like to ask, what kind of advice would you like to share with young professionals?
Take time to develop your passion and let it grow. I mean, very often, young professional, even myself, I remember, you have in mind, you need to rush, you need to get fast in achieving things. But I think it's also very important that you take the time to understand what you like and cultivate it. Because then otherwise you may find yourself too early in a spot in which you're not 100% convinced. So I think that taking the time to explore what you like and give it space is something which is mostly valuable to then do something which is sustainable in the long term. And by that meaning something that you do really like.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you. It was so inspiring. And I really appreciate your time. A very insightful conversation. I loved it. And before closing, once again, in case anyone wants to join the Body Architecture Studio, please visit the link in our bio. The studio will start next week on November 6th. Filippo Nassetti will lead the studio. And the result of the works, the selected works, 2 or 3 of them will be published as NFT on our foundation channel, on PA's foundation channel, and you and also our tutor will be commissioned with the outcome of it. Thank you so much, everyone, and goodbye. Goodbye, Filippo.
Bye. Thank you very much. It was great.
See you soon. See you next week.
See you.